Well, hey, for the first time in a while, we have an in-studio guest. Zach Goodman from the Felt Fanatic in Salem, Mass. will be joining me in a few to talk about sports memorabilia, collectibles, and so much more. Might even delve into a little American history. We will also have a friendly game of Hangman and who knows what else. All this and more coming up on the Paul Report right after this. All right. Hey, Zach's on screen with me. Hey, Zach.
Hello.
How are you? Oh, I have you on mute.
There we go.
Zach's here. I had the camera on before, and, well, I never shut it off, so there you go. You know what? I'm tossing everything out that I had planned.
Shit.
We're going to get right to you.
Okay.
We're going to get right to you. Well, I'll tell you what. First, want to talk about this one thing that I read about today on Reddit, because everything on Reddit is most likely true. I figure.
It's news, at least.
Yeah. So I read a story that happened in 2016 about a woman who was riding in an elevator, and the elevator stopped working. So the service people were called, and they found out to be a broken cable. Now, they banged on the door of the elevator, and they got no response. So they cut the power and told the residents to use a different elevator. They came back in a month and they found the woman's body dead. Now, I have a couple questions. What door were they banging on? Because I got stuck in an elevator once. Have you ever been stuck in an elevator?
No.
No, I've been stuck in an elevator, and it's a little off-putting, a little.
Panicky moment.
But you could hear me 10 floors up and 10 floors down. There was no way I was being left behind in an elevator. So I don't know why they couldn't reach her in some way, shape, or form, or she couldn't be vocal enough.
See, this feels like victim blaming.
Maybe she was mute. Maybe. But I'm just saying that having been in an elevator before, screaming my head off at the top of my lungs like I was left behind at a carnival with all the clowns. So, I'm just saying.
I feel off-center here. There we go.
Yeah, you were a little off-center. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame announced their inductees for this year.
I missed it.
You missed it?
Who's
Chubby
in?
Checker,
Okay.
Joe Cocker, Bad Company,
All right.
Cyndi Lauper, Outkast, the White Stripes, and Soundgarden.
It's interesting that they go out of their way to get the rap groups involved now.
I like Outkast.
Yeah.
I like them.
It's great.
I think it's great that they got in there. They are very,
It's just interesting for their brand.
well, rock.
They've put so much energy into defining themselves as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now they're confronted with having to recognize all of these great artists
Right.
who are outside of their genre. You know?
Yeah. Well,
So that's kind of, this is a...
it's all about eyeballs.
That they've,
It's all about the eyeballs looking
they
at them.
box themselves in a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
But then there are people who aren't getting in that, like rock legends that aren't getting
It's
in.
all voted by the fans, isn't it, anyway?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think that your fans vote in. It's like a public thing.
Yeah. No, I think the fans suck. No,
We never get elections right. So.
never get it. I don't know if you knew this. Last week, my wife and I were in Beverly at the Cabot Theater,
Across
seeing
the bridge.
Paul Reiser
Okay.
perform his stand-up.
Yep.
I found out that he is 69 years old. Just
Wonderful.
turned 69 back in March. He looks great. He sounds great. His material was relatable to folks like me. Probably not to you so much. You're a young fella.
What show was he on?
Mad About You.
Okay.
Who's also on Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Aliens.
Aliens, yes. Okay.
Okay. My Two Dads.
Didn't see that.
No, yeah, it's a little earlier. What else was he on? Whiplash, the movie Whiplash. Did you ever see that?
I know these titles, but definitely not like... You're right, I'm never like, hey, let's watch a Paul Reiser movie.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I'm going to check the chat here real quick. We got Andre listening, and we have Ken listening. And my wife, of course.
Good.
So they were mentioning that... Andre was being funny saying they're going to announce the Ice Spice induction.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Fast track her.
And I don't know if you knew, Mike Peters of The Alarm passed away of a decade's battle with cancer. That's sad. I like The Alarm. Anyway, so I realized late that there was a Celtics game tonight.
Right now?
Right now, actually. And I find that viewership goes down when local sports are on. I was unaware.
We're competing against a big thing.
Well, they're competing against a big thing. I don't know what else is on, but we're not that big thing. So what I was going to do is just sort of forget everything I was going to do. I was going to do Hangman, but I'm not going to do Hangman because there's literally 3 people listening. So this will be more of an aftermarket listen.
Love it.
So that's what'll happen. So I am going to just jump right in and introduce my guest, Zach Goodman, who is the owner-operator of the Felt Fanatic. Let's get Zach's name in there. Let's get Zach solely on the screen. There we go. Owner-operator of the Felt Fanatic. And I'm just going to let you tell me what the Felt Fanatic is and how it got its start. If you could just give us an introduction, that would be fantastic.
The Felt Fanatic is a nickname that I actually gave myself as I was selling doubles in my pennant collection. I have a really large pennant collection. That's how I'm known amongst other collectors. As a pennant collector, you can be a card collector and collect all kinds of things. I collect pennants. I have one of the largest pennant collections assembled. So people would, different vendors who I would sell to would say, you're the pennant guy or whatever. I'd say it's really generic. So there was one day where I somehow came up with the Felt Fanatic, and that's what stuck. And that's been the name of the business going forward. And really, it's just a name that I use to define myself in this very broad world of sports memorabilia, which is baseball cards, autographs, jerseys, what have you, anything related to being a sports fan or collecting is what the store is.
Now, how did you find yourself in this business? I mean, you went to school. What did you go to college for? What did you go to school for?
I was originally a public school teacher.
Okay. And you actually taught in schools?
Yeah.
You did that? How long did you do that for?
3 years.
Wow. Any specific grade or just a...
High school English, middle school geography, 10th, like 7th through 10th grade, really, generally.
In Salem or?
Once in Salem and in Wakefield, too. My student teaching was in Central Mass and Gardner.
Oh, okay.
Chair City.
See, I'm learning stuff about Zach I didn't know. I've known Zach for a few years now and never knew you were a school teacher.
Yep. So taught school, and that was I've been out of the classroom for 10 years.
Wow.
So, but always collected and did the Felt Fanatic kind of as an eBay page, or a lot of collectors sell their doubles on eBay.
Yep. Now, I know that you're celebrating your 10th year of the Felt Fanatic.
Yes.
I saw that on your website earlier today.
Yep.
So that seems to coincide with you leaving teaching. So what made you want to dive into that in a full-time way, and what, you actually went brick and mortar, which is
stupid.
Daring. I would say daring. I wouldn't say stupid. It's adventurous for sure. So what made you go the brick and mortar route?
By accident, I would say. It became I was an online seller all the way up until 2018 when I got an opportunity to be a vendor in a pop-up on Newbury Street in Boston. I was doing different collaborations with bars and all kinds of venues. If they wanted someone to come in with a rack of jerseys or something, you know, take up space and promote an evening. That was kind of how I got the name of the store out there for like hand-to-hand transactions outside of renting space at markets or something. It felt like it was more collaborative, better to establish yourself as an independent brand and all this stuff. So all that led into being a vendor in this marketplace that this ultimately really sketchy consignment business was running on Newbury Street. I kind of found out all this as I was going along, but they needed people to take up their space and were looking for different vendors, and I became one of those vendors. They wanted to take a cut of all your sales for anything you sold during this event. And I said, well, I'm really not cool with that because I'm an independent business. You know, I manage my own credit cards. I do all this stuff on my own. I don't need you to keep track of my sales. So I backed out at the last minute. And then, you know, a week goes by and they come back to me and they say, you know, you missed out on this great week. You know, we did all this business and all these other vendors made all this money and you missed out. And, you know, you should really get involved. And they were overstating it, obviously. And I said, okay, I'll get involved, but, you know, I have to manage my own sales. Like, you can't, I'll pay you a flat fee, but you can't, like, have an eye on my books or anything. Like, I'm going to do all that myself, and I'll just pay you up front, like, whatever you want for vending space. And I'll show up and I'll help you with the store and all this other stuff. So they went back and they huddled and they come back to me and they said, okay, you know, you're in. I say, okay. So then I was the only vendor paying them, like, I guess, a rent under the table to be in their spot. And another week goes by and then I think I outsold them. I did better than in my stuff alone than I did with all the other vendors in the store combined. It was just sports jerseys, memorabilia.
Yeah.
It was just kind of starting to get like attention. It was 2018, so the Red Sox they ended up winning the World Series that year. So that was 1 week, and then another week turns into a month. I just kept paying them. I paid them for the month to stay there as a vendor, and then a couple vendors peeled off. They started screwing people. They weren't making enough money. They start doing weird things behind my back that I wasn't aware of. So then they come to me and they say, we have this great opportunity for you. You're going to take over the whole back half of our shop. Pay us more money every month. And I said, awesome. So we were basically like co-businesses. They had the front half of this spot on Newbury Street.
Okay.
And I had the back half. And you had to walk through their spot to get to my spot. And that's how we operated for like 7 months. But it just got increasingly more apparent that they were very weird.
Sounds it.
Yeah, very weird, whether it was doing stuff that was under the table or hiring people that were just crazy, like clinically crazy.
That doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
So it was like a whole thing. And then that culminated in December when I basically just rented a moving truck and loaded all my shit up and left. And then opened up my current store in April 2019.
Well,
there are all kinds of that year could be a story to itself.
2018.
But it ultimately led to me getting out of there and going back to Salem because Newbury Street's really not conducive for a small business anyway. I learned all this on the fly.
Right.
You know, I didn't have any intentions of becoming a brick and mortar store. And then ultimately kind of built it backwards, I like to say. You know,
Sure.
because I was already in it.
So you move into Salem.
Yes.
And within, you said in April of 2019.
Within 3 months, I was open.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
had built a new store because it was office space, so it was blank. It was totally blank. So then I had gutted a new store and built it like custom, like painted the walls and laid the floors and put up my mural and made like how I thought the store should look.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you got some positive feedback on how the store is looking, and
It's been like that ever since. And then I kind of took the core of customers and people that I had made contacts with in Boston, and again migrated that back to Salem, and then integrated myself in the Salem business community, which is much different than Boston's business community. Plus, I'm already a resident of Salem, having worked in the Salem school system. I already knew a lot of people there, so it made it a much more natural fit to streamline myself in Salem and put my roots there.
cool. No, this is completely side question, has nothing to do with your business or anything. Have you ever heard of Salem Food Tours?
Yes.
You have. My buddy Mark, his wife runs that.
Wonderful.
Mark was my co-host on one of the shows I talked to you about.
A renowned food tour.
Renowned Food Tour.
Getting a great plug right now.
Yeah, they are. Salem Food Tours. I wish I had their number, but if Mark is listening, I'm sure he could probably post something into the chat and let us know. But I remember when she was starting that out in Salem, and I guess Salem is just a great town to have a business.
Is one of the greatest. It really is, and I say this: there aren't many places with 40,000 people that have international recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Salem, people from all over the world visit Salem. They know of Salem, and if I'm traveling, I can generally say I'm from Salem, not Boston or even Massachusetts. Might sound unfamiliar to people.
Right.
They recognize Salem as the witch city.
Right.
It's an amazing thing. And I truly get customers from every part of the globe, and now the most impressive thing is it's not limited to fall time. It's throughout the year. People really like coming during the summer, in the spring, and dodging the congestion that's.
The congestion it is October.
So, if you really love Salem, then you would visit during the spring or summer because you get to see everything. Without any of the craziness. If you like craziness, then by all means go in October.
Now, going back to you, you have received some recognition for your store, either you or your store. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? We got the Best of the North Shore for men's clothing back in 2021.
Yes. Yep. The North Shore Mag, which runs this reader poll every year. I got Reader's Choice. Which I am more proud of because it's actually readers vote on it versus an editor's choice, which is just something arbitrary picked by the editor. She usually picks Ghibli's suit. The suit placed on 114. I think they've won editor's choice, 10 years running.
Wow.
So the year that I won, I really got a kick out of, being the reader's choice for clothing, and then the editor's choice. It kind of gave me an insight as to the difference between what the editor sees their audience as and what the audience
is doing,
actually
right?
Consumes.
Excellent.
So, so that again, great free publicity and just kind of a reflection of how my customers feel about me and see the Felt Fanatic fitting in this, broad.
There's a broad landscape of businesses in Salem. Yeah. No, and you are open by appointment.
During the week, I do appointments for anyone who wants to come in and have the store to themselves. If you're, visiting, again, tourists come at all times. Mm-hmm. So it's convenient to be able to open up the store whenever somebody wants it. So I do that during the week, and it also allows me to be, if I'm going to go out and buy a collection or host someone who has a collection, makes it easy just to kind of do it in closed quarters. And then during the week, I'm open to the public. Anyone can come by 12 to 6, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, during the weekends. Okay.
Yep. And you can shop online, of course, all the time.
Yeah.
Feltfanatic.com.
And actually, I did have that
24/7.
up on screen a little bit, but let me get rid of me, and we'll put your information up on the screen right there. There we go. So, and there was an ESPN thing I read about.
Yeah, UniWatch. That was one of my first breakthroughs. If you're a sports nerd, then you probably know Paul Lucas and UniWatch. And he's a guy who, all through the 90s and 2000s, he had a whole blog about teams changing their uniforms and the history of uniforms and details in uniforms and anything jersey logo related. Paul Lucas covered in a very extensive, fanatical way. And it was extremely fun to read if you're a fan of nicknames and logos and history in that fashion. So he profiled the store in a list of, like his Christmas list of, if you were going to get a gift for a sports fan that has everything, what would you get them? And there was a whole list of things, and Shop the Felt Fanatic was one of his suggestions.
Oh, nice.
More specifically, getting them a pennant from a defunct team, or a vintage era that the person really appreciated, which is exactly what pennants are all about.
Right. And then you're wearing your classic Expos hat today.
Yep.
That doesn't exist anymore.
Yep. People have a lot of passion and nostalgia for, especially, I feel like a universal nostalgia for the teams that don't exist anymore. But if you truly grew up as a fan of one of those teams, and a lot of people understand, how important a team can be to a city or a culture. And now it becomes kind of an emblem if you think about Whalers stuff.
Yep, Hartford Whalers.
Yep, or even there's the Expos, but there's the Nordiques in Quebec. The Red Sox B is very emblematic, or the Brooklyn B.
Right.
Becomes kind of a symbol.
The emblem of the Montreal Expos is, I heard that's supposed to be a roll of film. Is that true?
It's an M. It's an M.
It's an M. Okay, someone once told me that it's supposed to represent...
There are a lot of confusing things.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I was much younger, so I was probably more gullible back then, but because it's the Montreal Expositions.
Yeah, and they're named for the World's Fair.
Yeah, so I don't know why they said Expo. Maybe they thought, I don't know, camera. I don't know. So I do have some chats happening here. Some people mentioning things. So, Andre, gentleman I work with, he says he misses the Expos. But it says it's an E and a B built into an M.
Is it really?
Yeah, I don't know. Look at it. Well, it looks like an E and a B. Kind of. An E with a long tongue. I don't know.
What do E stand for?
Expositions. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. So, where do you get your items from? What is the main, like, is there a main channel or an avenue you go down to look for stuff or to get stuff? Or is it sort of all over the place? Just wherever you can find something, you'll get it.
Yeah, there is no cool stuff store, fortunately.
Yeah, sadly. Well, your store is a cool stuff store.
Yeah, but there isn't a cool stuff wholesaler. So it's a lot of estates. And then another thing that comes up with a lot of this is, especially with a sports fan, you talk about nostalgia and desire to collect things. Sports fans generally die with their stuff. There's very few examples of a sports fan who willingly walks up to someone and says, I'm ready to give it all up, or, how much can I get for my lifetime of collecting? Very rarely do collectors come to this rationalization that no one that survives them is going to want their shit. So it's a lot of estates. It's a lot of, just people inherit it and don't know what to do with it, feel overwhelmed, need to process it, need it appraised. And you come into collections that way. Mostly, I would say those things. And very rarely, again, does it ever end up at Goodwill, will believe that any sports card is valuable, or autographs. They'll put that behind the counter no matter who it is. So it makes it very hard to get any kind of resellable value from a place like that.
Somewhere in my storage, I have 2 autographs that are framed. One of Gillian Anderson and one of David Duchovny, signed on set up in Vancouver back in 1990-something when they were filming The X-Files. How much can I get for that?
Honestly, Dennis might pay you upwards of $50.
Really? Well, interesting.
Yeah, those autographs are tough. Unless they're dead, they just keep signing.
Yeah. Well, I'll just have to wait till...
Yeah, you just got to wait, and then you have to hope that the popularity just exceeds how many autographs are already on the market.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's the only one I have, really.
Another common question is, what is my stuff worth? And then the answer is not much. And then, I think I put that on your sheet. Not all collections are treasure. Right.
I think you did mention that. So, do you appraise items? You do. Now, did you have to get some kind of certification that you're...
No, it's. I mean, appraisals are, abstract, really.
Okay.
And so to look at something and to use, your best understanding of it, I would argue as a professional that I'm as good as anyone. And, some people believe me and some people don't. And I think you're just as likely to be told you're full of shit if you're appraising anything. You look at a house or, again, anything.
I mean, people's opinions are their opinion.
Exactly. So some people don't like to hear, what your opinion is. But yeah, I would say that the more things you appraise and the more experience you have in the industry, the more qualified you are as an appraiser. And that goes, again, in anything.
Yeah. Now, have you ever been in a situation where you had procured some items and then some family member from the woodwork comes out and says, no, I want that stuff back?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
Yeah. It's very frustrating to deal with families who sometimes think that you are misleading them into thinking that the item is worth less. Again, even though it's data driven, I use a very rigid process for appraising things. But absolutely, people get scared. They tend to want more money, or they think that you're misleading them, or they get in a family member's ear and say this, so and so is misleading you, and then they want to take it to get a second opinion, and now you're left competing with another vendor, kind of brings out. So that you're very motivated. Sports memorabilia is extremely competitive, extremely cutthroat. I'm very motivated to give you correct information and my best offer off the bat, because I don't need to be competing with anyone else.
Right.
Because I need the stuff. If it's the right stuff, then I want to buy it. So
have you reached a point, or do you think does anyone in this business ever reach a point where their opinion / appraisal is relatively unquestioned? Like they are just so well respected in the business that...
There's a pyramid, definitely. And so I'm definitely down here. And then there are people at the top who work for auction houses who make, upper 6 figures in salary and 7 figures in some cases to appraise and evaluate memorabilia and bring it to market. And those are the people that see, the Babe Ruth autographs, the George Washington documents, all the best stuff, and card authenticators and people like that handling, again, very high-end collectibles that are on par with bullion or property, or these are really unbelievable assets, that, historic level documents, stuff like that.
So if I bring it down a notch and I say people at your level, not at the high end, but the local level, as far as local level people in your business? Would you, you must know other folks who do this in the area, and not to talk smack about any of them, but do you feel like, do you give a better barometer of what something is worth than some other people? Or have you looked at other people and go, wow, they really nailed that because I only thought of it this way, and
No. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
But no. I think there is a lot of consistency in sports memorabilia, and that's another thing that makes it so competitive. Is that you want to get a deal done right, and you don't want to develop a reputation as someone who comes in too low, all the time.
Right.
Because then that's gonna inhibit your ability to procure any, complete any deals, and really work among other dealers too. If you're never willing to offer what something is worth, then you're never going to get, you're never going to get to see the best stuff. Like, it's just, no one's going to take you seriously as a player.
Because if you're constantly lowballing, then
you're
not looking out for
pocket, you're not looking out for me, and you're not going to so it just doesn't work. Nobody wants to work with you. So again, there's a lot of intrinsic incentive to come to the table and act right, because if you don't, that you're going to lose these opportunities going forward. You really don't have three strikes. You have one chance.
Yep, that whole giving up one chance to make a first impression type.
Yeah, it's more serious than a first impression, because you can't move past it. It precipitates what comes next.
Yeah. Now I got a question from the audience. They're asking, with sports memorabilia, do you ever deal in, say, like Magic cards or stuff like that? Or is that sort of beyond your...
No, so that would be like trading card games, TCG. I don't really get into any of that.
Okay.
Strictly vintage sports cards.
Okay.
Anything that you would date like 1985 and earlier would be what I specialize in. Really, 50s and 60s. I don't get into too much pre-war. Like pre-war would be... like 1952 and earlier, or 45 and earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really collect much of that, so I'm very much between like 1952 and 1985. Almost any sports card under the sun.
Now, just one of the questions I'd asked you previously, just to kind of circle back around to it, what trends are you seeing in your industry, and how are they affecting or impacting your business or your customers?
I think that there's a lot of interest in sports cards, definitely in the media. You hear about an auction. You hear about stuff that sets record at auction more and more, I think, in the mainstream media. So there's, a lot of interest in, again, really high-end collectibles. Like the one thing that sticks out just this week was Kobe's debut jersey sold for $7 million.
Yeah.
So, really strong prices for very special pieces. And then generally, older cards are holding their value and kind of being seen as something that, if I'm gonna gamble, or if I'm gonna buy scratch tickets, or I have this money that I'm gonna spend, and people choose to spend it on baseball cards or memorabilia because there's this feeling that there's some kind of hold or return on it in the future, versus shooting it all away in this one shot, betting or something like that.
Do many of these items tend to hold their value, and are there things that don't hold their value, historically speaking?
Yeah, certainly. Vintage stuff tends to maintain its value. If you're buying, Mickey Mantle cards, it's very safe. Classic players, very steady kind of upward plane for demand and cash return. And then, if you look at the modern side of sports cards, it's all about what rookie is going to become popular, and who's playing now, and their injuries or week-to-week performance can impact sales. I think, and the card companies respond to that too by simply printing more cards. So now you're in a situation where they're watering down
they're flooding
their
the market.
product and flooding the market. And definitely, a person that comes to mind would be Victor Wembanyama with the Spurs, first overall pick. Last year, outstanding talent. The kid's 7'5", in position to be a phenomenal NBA player. But people just keep buying up his cards, and there has to be a point where enough cards are produced to satisfy the market. So, so it'll eventually hit this tipping point. But they just keep printing cards. There's more, and people keep consuming them. So when that tipping point happens, no matter how many cards you have, no matter how good he is, you're not going to get that return because they're simply not making any more Mickey Mantle autographs or not printing any more cards from a certain year's set. So all of that is finite, and that's the difference between vintage and modern.
Yeah, and I can see why you would go like from 1985 back to 1945, that area, because that stuff, I would assume, keeps its value.
Yeah, there is a turning point in certain years where production quantities change, and it changes, again, the value of the cards. And the ability to procure certain things.
I had a shit ton of cards when I was younger. Shit ton.
Sure you did.
And they all got thrown out.
They all got thrown away.
It's a common story, I know.
Heard this story many times.
Yep. Not by my hands.
Yep. It's always someone else. It's usually a mother, a younger brother, a cousin. You move.
Someone put it in their wheel spokes to make that cool sound.
Pitch them at the wall. There's all kinds of things.
With the Yastrzemski rookie card in mint condition.
Yep.
Yeah,
very, very few people actually took care of their cards.
Yeah.
It wasn't ever a thought to do that.
Well, what can we do? Coulda, shoulda, woulda, right?
Some people like handled cards. That's
really?
Thing. Oh, yeah. Lots of collectors for low-grade cards. I think that's a cool thing. I sell more low-grade. I sell low-grade faster than I sell high-grade because you have to get a buyer for your high-grade stuff, right? It's more expensive. It's very specific. Nobody just waltzes in with thousands of dollars and says, I want this card. But generally, if people, they'll get something for $10 or $20. It's a much easier decision.
Have you noticed any, I don't want to say increase, but on the days that you're open from 12 to 6 on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the days that you're open, do you notice a lot of foot traffic coming into the store? Just people casually looking and end up buying something? Or is it more of a, people that come in are coming in for a specific reason?
No, there's probably a mix of those people. I think the people that come in for a specific reason motivate other people to come in and look around. That's all kinds of feeds it in because the people that come in looking for something, they really want it. They're going to share it online, they're going to tell their friends, and then that's going to inspire someone else in the universe to maybe come down and look around. That they may not know what they're looking for. They may just want to see what all the hubbub is about, and or if they're hosting a lot of shows and events in the store, so that brings people who have no idea that the store exists and have no interest in going or no plans to go to a sports memorabilia shop during that day or the next day either.
Yep. So that brings me to my next question. You just don't have a sports memorabilia at the store. You do events.
Yeah.
What type of events do you, you kind of alluded to it in your last statement, but specifically what kind of events do you do at the store?
Live concerts, mostly. Open mic, stand-up comedy. That's pretty much it. Those are always kind of the two genres.
And are
DJs, rap events, but live music, live comedy at night on Fridays and Saturdays, usually 4 to 5
all local or people from from out of town? And
the bands are coming from all over now. We've had bands from the Midwest, from the South, from Virginia, New York, California, all over pretty much. I can think of probably a dozen different states that bands have come from.
Nice.
And it's all like cold calling. They want to play in Salem, or they're passing through. They partner with local acts, but there are a lot of local shows too. There's an incredible amount of talent on the North Shore.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot of talent around here, and I think it's very cool that you're getting people from outside the state or even outside the North Shore to come in and do a show.
Never plan. Don't want to be a venue, I always say, but kind of doing it for fun and doing it out of a desire to preserve a small scene that's kind of getting encroached on, a little bit of an endangered species with the basement scene and the DIY scene, and just kind of a desire to go out and see your friend's band not at a bar. A lot of people are in the they've given up drinking, or they're in the straight edge movement, or they just don't want to be at a bar basically, and to give my spot up to that, to allow people to really enjoy music is something I enjoy too. So
would you ever consider branching out a little bit to like a poetry slam or anything like that?
Anyone who wants to use a space is welcome to email me and see what we can do.
Excellent.
But yeah, poetry slam. We do a lot of open. The open mic DJ is really cool because he mixes live beats. People come in and freestyle over it. So there's all similar stuff like that already happening. And same thing with the comedy. The comedians kind of run the gamut in terms of people who do music comedy, write their own songs, all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, I still keep meaning to come down for one of the comedy shows, not to perform.
You should perform. We need a veteran presence. There's a lot of people that can learn a lot from you.
Well, surprisingly enough, talking about veteran presence, my buddy Mark just jumped on. He is a renowned Boston comic. Been doing it for 30 plus years now. 2025.
Right.
So looking at 25 years. 35 years. Sorry, shit. 35 years, Mark. Sorry. And his wife runs the Salem Food Tours.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep. So Mark
might know Ali Del Franco and a couple of the other North Shore comedians that helped me coordinate the open mic night at the Felt Fanatic. Because they do a lot of different events at the bars around town. So
yeah, definitely want to make my way over there and
please come by.
See everything. 35 years. That's what I said. 35 years. So yeah, and Mark, Zach's shop is in Salem. I'm actually going to put Zach on screen here. Oops. You were on screen, but I'm just going to put you on there alone. And there, put up your information. I don't have your phone number out here, but let me just kind of do this real quick.
What do we need a phone number for?
If people want to call you, and do you want people to call you? Just go to the website.
They can email.
Oh, just email? Okay, what's it's the Felt Fanatic at
Gmail.
At Gmail?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There we go.
All digital inquiries.
There we go. All right. So now we have that up there. So yeah. So want to kind of going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes, but I put this question on the sheet about stuff that you don't want me to talk about, which is just a license for me to bring it up, but I won't. I won't bring it up because,
I trusted you with that information.
I know, and I'm not going to bring it up. I'll tell you about the time that I pooped myself in my car. I'll tell you about that.
Please.
Okay. No, I won't, actually.
By all means. We were trending towards that, I feel.
Key takeaways from being here tonight, talking to my audience. And there is a larger after show viewership that does watch this.
I don't doubt you.
I'm just saying. What kind of takeaways do you want, people to have about you, about your store, about your business?
I'm not a front, so people can, believe that now. No, but come visit Salem. Come enjoy our little community. I'm a big promoter of all the tourism and a lot of the growth that's happened in town, which I think is a really significant thing and a testament to how small businesses can network and feed off of each other. We don't have, we're really working hard to keep corporate dollars out of Salem and keep all the chain stuff out and kind of do it ourselves, and we're reaping a lot of the benefits of that. Yeah. So I think that's a testament that a lot of, other people in other communities can learn from. So please visit Salem, check it out. It's really important. Shop online. Happy to appraise your collection. Travel across New England to, appraise all that stuff and see collections up close. And if you have something really valuable, we could talk about, going even further than that. So it's,
Excellent. Now, do you still do stuff outside of the store? Like go to I guess, I don't know if flea market is the right word.
Vintage markets, curated markets is, that's another thing that I guess changes in the industry. That's kind of not related to sports memorabilia. That's more like the vintage apparel side of it. But I would say that's something that's really become excessively corporatized, and they really milk a lot of small vendors for everything they're worth. And again, we talked about at the beginning where building a brand and kind of getting my own identity was really important to me from the outset. So to pay another promoter all this money to rent a space to blend in with however many vendors are going to pack in the space on top of me isn't palatable. It might have worked for me when I was smaller and really trying to get my name out there and define myself, but I feel like I've grown past that, and I've actually achieved to a point where I can put other vendors on a stage, and I have a parking lot, and I actually do small little vendor flea markets and give people who may have never set up at an event before an opportunity to hand out their business card and show their art and kind of
that is fantastic. So, again, another thing I was unaware that and I can see how, especially in Salem, small business helps other small businesses try to rise up and
and again, like everyone starts somewhere,
right.
So and that's another thing that I talk to a lot of people who are starting it or young people who have a lot of questions about entrepreneurship, where your margins are really thin when you're starting, and increasingly I hate to say it, but post 2020, there seems to be a lot of people trying to capitalize on this desire to sell you a kit to start a new business, whether it's podcasting or point of sale stuff or whatever it is. There's all kinds of genres of things where you got to buy all this stuff as you get started, and I don't really think that's a real thing. You need your intuition. You need a baseline of stuff, but you don't need all this expensive
stock
you're
or
just
whatever.
Paying,
yeah.
You're just paying someone else. Not so much stock as much as it is like promotion materials or logos or all the stuff that kind of pulls you away from getting good stock.
Okay.
Because what people want to buy is stock. They don't want to buy your logo.
Right.
So that's another thing that I think makes Salem really valuable, and it's challenging with these events now because they really do. They bleed you dry, and it's not fair. So I've pulled away, and I favor collaboration. If anyone wants to collaborate with me, I'm all ears. But increasingly, people kind of approached me with a pay me vibe, and I don't,
Now, what is
I have more value than that.
What is the thing down? Is it in Connecticut that you do?
The Brimfield Antique Festival.
Yeah.
It's near Connecticut. It's down near Sturbridge. It's where 84 and the Pike come together.
Okay.
On Route 20, and that's something that's unbelievable. I call Brimfield, it's like a dead show and your grandmother's attic had a baby. And it runs for a week, and Brimfield is literally a one-road town where Route 20 just kind of runs through the middle, and then on either side of Route 20, it's all flea markets. It's probably, 10 square miles of flea market, and it runs from Tuesday at dawn to Sunday at dusk. So if you're within 100 miles of Brimfield on any one of those days, and you like going to flea markets, it's very worth going, just for the people watching.
Right.
Pack a cooler and a wagon. Bring your dog if your dog is good with the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And,
now, how is this different from what you were just talking about, where flea markets are people?
This isn't corporate anything.
Okay, so this is just small town.
This is all wide open, kind of. The town is subdivided into different fields. Like different property owners basically rent out patches of their land and have created this festival. And everyone's an independent agent. I have to buy a business license to deal with this. There's a whole racket that Brimfield runs. The market is so essential to their economy because it's a small town. But I approach that as an independent agent. There is no corporate dollars would love to influence Brimfield in some way, but they would never allow it. And that's kind of the major difference. You're outside of an urban district. It's very, very different.
Okay. But you enjoy going there when you
I liquidate everything that sits around in the store. I mean, I don't do flea markets, and this is the one flea market a year that I would do. So everything starts at 50% off or more. It's everything that's been sitting in the store for too long, and it's stuff that's kind of extra in buyouts that I don't feel it's like Filene's basement stuff.
Yeah,
like it's
stuff like, to get rid of.
It's not good enough to go in the store, but it's worth something, and
might as well get something for it.
You might as well get something for it, and this is always it's a fun opportunity to do flea market style and just blow out a bunch of stuff, give people a fair deal, and go look for deals myself.
And hang out with the common clay of the new.
Hang out with some real New England salt of the earth.
Just always reminds me of Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, you do sit around the campfire a lot.
Morons. No, I'm just kidding. I kid. I'll cut that out of the final one. Well, Zach, I very much want to thank you for coming in and talking about what you do and how you do it and how you support, other people trying to do some things and rise people up and raise them up, and how you've begun your business from kind of a bad situation.
It wasn't ideal.
Yeah. But you kind of built it up, and now you backed into a retail space that seems to be working pretty well for you.
I'm anchored, we'll say. It's a polite word for stuck.
Hey, but if it's paying the bills and you're having fun doing it,
I'm paying someone's bills.
There you go. See? All right. Well, Zach, thank you
Paul.
again.
Thank you.
And I am gonna just do this. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for listening and watching tonight. This will be up on YouTube for the replay. And if you have any questions for Zach, hit him up at, there it is right there, The Felt Fanatic at thefeltfanatic.com and thefeltfanatic@gmail.com. No phone calls, please. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope you have a great week. We will be back next week, working on a guest for next week. Hopefully, a musical guest. Ooh. Look at that. All right, everyone. Thanks very much and have a good night. Do I have a closing? I never seem to have my closing ready. Let's see. Oh, here we go. End credits.